What's up guys, you're watching Li-Fi TCG. Today we've got another reserve list discussion. So there's nothing going to be relevant on the screen. You can tab out and just listen. That's all good. I might just wash some cards around just so I have something to do with my hands, but no meaningful visuals here. So about 1 week ago, slightly over a week ago, so not the most recent weekend, but the weekend before that, there was a I think Minneapolis Open run by StarCity, and you know, Cedric and Patrick Sullivan were on commentary, doing a good job as usual, and there was some downtime in between the matches, and they were answering questions from the chat. So one of the questions was, is the reserve list a problem for Magic in the long run? Will they ever find a loophole to reprinting some of those cards? And Patrick's answer, so Cedric didn't really comment on this much, Patrick's answer was no and probably not. So he elaborated on that a lot, and before you listen to me anymore, you need to go and watch the Twitch VOD of that whole discussion. So I'll put the link in the description, you can go watch that now. A little pause here while you go watch that. Okay, so now you're back. So Patrick had three main arguments in his position, right? So the first one was that Tournament, Legacy, and Vintage are a very niche subset of Magic. So if you can't afford to play them, then you shouldn't care. His second main point is that some people can't afford Standard even, or any other hobby or leisure or luxury item at many different price ranges, right? So the complaint of this should be cheaper has no weight to it. It has no value. So that's his second main argument. And the final point that he makes is that the reserve list has a lot of value in encouraging people to buy cards, right? Because it builds this atmosphere where people are confident about spending money and not worried about the value of their collection. So those are the 3 points. So let's go through those one by one. So firstly, Tournament, Legacy, and Vintage are a niche subset of Magic. If you can't afford to play them, then you shouldn't care. So, like perhaps, perhaps he was addressing this because he was asked, is the reserve list a problem for Magic in the long run? Will they ever find a loophole to reprinting some of those cards? So the interpretation here might be that, like, obviously Standard and Modern aren't affected by the reserve list. Standard and Modern are a huge part of Magic. They are not going to die because of the reserve list, therefore Magic is going to be fine in the long run. So like maybe his answer is like in the context of this. And I can't really disagree with that, but if you really enjoy a certain thing, are you not allowed to be like disappointed that that is going away? Like if they suddenly cancelled the NBA or whatever, because I guess I'm pretty sure he's a basketball fan or some kind of sports fan, right? People in the USA tend to be. Well, you can't just say like, oh, okay, basketball's cancelled, but you know, football's still on. Like, it's just not an argument that really makes any sense. If we can preserve these different avenues for people to enjoy themselves at basically no cost, then why should we not do that? I think a direct quote from that conversation, Patrick says, if the only way you can enjoy Magic is with Moat and Underground Sea, then your expectations are unreasonable. And I say, well, why? You know, who are you to make that judgment? only way you can enjoy sports is on an indoor court with people bouncing a ball up and down their hands and putting it in a basket, then your expectations are unreasonable. Like this just isn't an argument that makes sense. But you know, like I say, it might be addressing the question of is the reserve list long term going to be a problem for Magic? And you know, do I think that Wizards is going to, like, the company is going to die because of the reserve list? No, but Legacy and Vintage obviously will. So moving on to the second point now, because the first point wasn't much to talk about. So the second point: some people can't afford standard, or sorry, I'm making this sound like a quote, but I'm just paraphrasing. Some people can't afford standard or any fun leisure thing. So too many people's complaints about Legacy seem like it's too expensive for me, but because different people all around the world can't afford many different things, that complaint doesn't have any particular significance to it. So let's address this point. So if we think about any other thing like this, and we can work down the scale from like a Ferrari to like a movie ticket or something. So let's say I'm going to the movies, and I go to the ticket office and the ticket is $12 and I only have $10 on me. And I think, well, damn, you know, why can't this be cheaper? I only have $10, it's $12. I would be able to enjoy myself and watch this movie. If only it was $2 cheaper, you know, they should cut the price. So why should the movie theater not cut the price? Well, the movie theater has obviously determined somehow, and along with the production studio and all the rest of the actors in that chain, that if they put the price up, demand would go down and they would have less sales and they would lose money. And if they drop the price, then the sales volume wouldn't increase enough to make up for the lost revenue, so they would lose money that way. So there's some kind of equilibrium where this price they've reached is the one that makes them the most money. So you can't really make an argument for them to change their price in either direction, unless you have some like weird anti-capitalist economics-based argument, right? They're a business, they're going to do what they do to maximize their profits. You can't really tell them what to do otherwise. So fair enough. And that's just as true as it is for the movie ticket as it is for the Ferrari or basically any other commodity that you can buy from the manufacturer, right? But the problem with the reserve list cards is that you can't buy them from the manufacturer. They're only available on the secondary market. So if we assume that Wizards are a rational actor, like they would want to be able to print reserve list cards, right? Because that would just be like a revenue stream that they currently don't have access to, just suddenly appearing out of nowhere. So it'd be in the interest of Wizards to print these. It'd be in the interest of the players to have access to these for cheaper, because remember, this is an instance where, you know, reducing the prices for the players also increases the profits for the company, right? The only people that lose in this situation are like the speculators and the hoarders and like the investors, all of these people that have a lot of, well, that's not necessarily true. You know, they could be players just with a lot of, they could also be players and have a lot of money tied up in their collections. You know, these are the people that lose. But so the thing is that, firstly, nearly everybody, or like the overwhelming consensus I see of the people that are players, don't care about the value of their cards, right? Like, Patrick even admits this himself. Like, he just says, you know, if he wanted a moat to play with, he would buy one, and that'd be it, you know. I've shown my reservist cards in videos before. Like I have a whole modern affinity deck, right, that I've put on the screen right now, and like I couldn't even tell you what the prices of the cards are in that. Like is Mox right now, is Mox Opal, is that like $20? Is that $50? Is it more? Like I don't even have any idea for that card or any of the other cards in the deck. Like players don't really care about the value of their collection. They buy the cards so that they can play with them, right? So the quote unquote like player hoarders don't seem like they would be that upset with reprints. And then like the big money speculators, I don't think there's anything like morally wrong with like finding ways to maximize your own earnings or whatever. Like you know, like I guess maybe like Martin Shkreli or whatever is taking it a bit too far with like manipulating the markets for like medicine and stuff. I don't really want to comment on that because I'm not too familiar with it, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I don't think that people that are hoarding trading cards are committing any sort of crime in a legal or moral sense, but I don't think that their interest outweighs the interest of the players, is how I would summarize my argument. You know, I had a guy comment on my last reserve list discussion when we were talking about the tweet that Saffron Olive put out and all the comments around that, and he was adamant that, you know, MTG is a collectible card game, and if you eliminate the reserve list, then you abolish the collectible element, which is a critical part of the MTG experience apparently. But I disagree with this totally. I think yes, it's a collectible card game, but let's re-emphasize that it's a collectible card game, right? It exists so that you can play it as a game. I think the unique value in MTG is the game aspect of it. Like, there are people that have like nice sets of like all the cards in their binder or whatever, but I don't think the value of that is special enough. Like, people that appreciate that can surely find other avenues. Like, it's not noticeably different to like stamp collecting or whatever, but playing a game of Legacy or Vintage is. And even then, like all of the alpha Birds of Paradise or like Arabian Nights Mountains or whatever, they're still going to be collectibles, right? Like, the reserve list isn't going to change that. So yeah, so we'll come sort of on a little bit of a slight tangent, but yeah, the whole idea that like complaining that you can't afford it does make sense in this instance, because not only is it a complaint from like a personal selfish selfish reason, but it's also a complaint that Wizards are seemingly choosing not to be rational actors. So I think that is an important consideration. So the third point, the reserve list has a lot of value in encouraging people to spend money on cards, creates an atmosphere where people are confident about spending money on cards and not stressing out all the time about what's happening to the value of their collection. So something really weird happens in this part of the discussion where Patrick says, like, we have standard, right, where people spend money on cards and then then later the cards are worth less money. But then we have this other thing where people spend money on cards and then the cards keep their money. And then Patrick says, well, that having that value retention option has some value for some reason, and you know, having that confidence about cards holding their value is good. But like then we look back to Standard, where you know everybody knows that when you buy the cards, they're not going to be worth that much money later on, but it's still really popular, right? So what's the problem? You know, when people can buy the cards and they can enter tournaments and play games with them and have fun, like the issue of how much they are worth in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months or 24 months is not that important, right? Because you're getting the value out of the fun in playing with the cards. You don't need to hold all the value sitting in your binder doing nothing. Okay? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that if the reserve list didn't exist, then the cards would just be cheaper. So you wouldn't need to feel like there was this massive protection. You wouldn't need to feel as though investment was securely protected if you weren't putting so much money in the first place, which is the problem that the reserve list is creating right now. Like, at some point, like, I think it's better to just bite the bullet and make it cheaper at, like, now, so that this isn't an issue anymore in the future. So that's my response to the third point. I don't think that like having this safe haven, having cards being a safe haven for your dollars is not an inherently positive thing. So that's all 3 points. And then at the end of the video, Patrick gives like this really weird challenge. He basically says that like, I'm not going to entertain any arguments about this unless you give me a number, you know, like tell me what Underground Sea should be worth and back that up with logic and reason, or you know, there's something like this. That's basically the point that he's making. And then he correctly says that, well, you can't do this because there's no way you can pick a number that objectively makes sense. So therefore don't even bother, right? So basically what he's saying is that he doesn't want to hear any argument except for one that inherently suffers from the continuum fallacy, which he can just instantly debunk straight away. Like, it's not a very honest argumentative tactic, I guess I would say. Yeah, so to summarize my position on this, like, it's not that I think Underground Sea needs to be $200 or $100 or $50 or $10. I think Underground Sea should be at the price where Wizards makes the most money from selling it. That's it. You know, and like just let the price equilibrate from there. And then we can have a discussion about like Wizards' attitude towards the secondary market and how like modern cards are like also insanely expensive, and is there something that needs to change with how they view that? But that's a completely separate thing. Yeah, just once, like, I've heard, we've heard some pretty good ideas. Like, they could put reserve list cards as like GP promos. Like, why did we have Progenitus as a GP promo for like a year? when people paying obscene amounts to play GPs. It doesn't cost any Wizards any money to print like an actual good card instead of this like $3 mythic. You know, if people had an idea that they could sell like a big box cube product with a lot of cool cards in it, you know, there's all sorts of ways that Wizards could monetize this. And I'm not going to say that Underground Sea should be X price, because like Patrick correctly identifies, that argument would just be inherently stupid. But I just want to see Wizards able to print the card whenever they feel like it's going to make them some dollars, right? And then everything will work out the best for everybody, roughly, is how I would put it. And then the second reason why this angle from Patrick is bad is because I can throw it straight back in his face. Because Patrick says right at the start that if they would start over, or if he would start over, would he get rid of it, or like would he implement it at all in the first place? I guess is how he's thinking about it, and he says no, like it's a bad idea. In hindsight, it was a bad idea, I think is what his point is saying. I think is what he's trying to say. But now, it's a good thing. So, he doesn't explicitly say this, but the only way I can interpret that statement is that over time, like the reserve list is inherently not a good idea, but over time, the value of the cards has skyrocketed so much that it's now like a necessary institution to protect the value of people's collections. Like that's the only way I can interpret the statement that the reserve list like probably wasn't a good idea at the time, but now we have to keep it. Like that, I can't interpret that in any other way. So to reiterate that, the reserve list wasn't a good idea at the time, in hindsight, but now prices have got so high that it's necessary or positive, a good thing to protect the value of people's collections, is essentially what Patrick's argument is, or what I think that it is. So prices have climbed so high. How high have they climbed? Well, okay, we'll say for the sake of argument that Underground Sea is $500. So we can't get rid of the reserve list now because Underground Sea is $500. Could we get rid of the reserve list if Underground Sea was $200? Like the value of people's collections hasn't skyrocketed that much then. Could we get rid of the reserve list if Underground Sea was $100? What if the value of Underground Sea was only $50? Like, what's the highest, Patrick? What is the highest value Underground Sea could be where you would think that getting rid of the reserve list is okay? Right? You can't pick it. It doesn't make sense. Like, for all the same reasons that I can't declare the value that I think Underground Sea should be, right? So yeah, his position just isn't good. Yeah, that's what I would say about that. So I do like Patrick. Of course, his commentary is great. We all know this. But I thought that this response was surprisingly poor. So yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not as an experienced broadcaster as he is, so I possibly haven't articulated myself as well as I could have. But hopefully I communicated my ideas clearly here. If you still agree with Patrick, or you want some clarification on the things that I said, or if I change your mind or anything, feel free to just comment. That would be great. As you can see, I've got some Abzan cards out here. I'm feeling the vibe of the Hour of Promise in Standard, so Nationals is coming up. Got the GP soon as well, so that might be the next thing. So yeah, that's all for today. Life at TCG signing out.